Hi friends, welcome to my channel. Today in this video, I'm going to show you how you can configure a cert-based VPN on Palo Alto Firewall. So in my topology, as you can see on screen, I have Palo Alto Firewall on the right hand side connecting to the PFsense open source firewall on the left hand side, and the protected pair in this particular scenario is 1111, which is behind the Palo Alto, and 14.140.40.109, which is behind the PFSense. And just to add on to this, my external interface, which in this case is 1/1 Ethernet, and this is ETH0. And on the Palo Alto firewall, the external interface is on untrust zone. And this is loopback, and the tunnel 1 interface is in untrust. Okay, tunnel 1 is in trust zone. So maybe if I can move this to trust zone, so it will be easier for us to understand the topology. So it's fairly simple. Now we will do the configuration. I guess I already have the configuration on the Palo Alto firewall. This is my PFSense firewall, which is already configured. And on the Palo Alto firewall, well, today in this video, I'm going to cover two scenarios. One is with the certificate generated from the Palo Alto firewall, the CA certificate generated on the Palo Alto firewall, and then the server certificate signed by the CA that you have generated on the firewall. And the other option that we will cover in this video is the imported certificate. Let's say you have an external CA cert or external CA, and that external CA is responsible for signing the certificate. So in that scenario, you will generate the certificate from the external CA server, and then you will import the certificate onto the cert store of PA. So let's get started. Like I said, ETH1/1 is in the untrust zone, which is having the IP address 127, and there is a loopback interface which is having the IP address 1111, as you can see on my screen. On the other hand, you have PFSense, which is having the IP address 109, and the protected address or the subnet here in this scenario is 14.140.40.109 and 1111. So before getting into the actual configuration, let me show you the simple configuration what I have on my firewall. So two zones are created. First zone is having loopback, turn1, loopback 1. Untrust is having the external interface, which is used for the tunnel establishment. So in the VR, I have a default route pointing to 14.140.40.109, which is this guy, pointing to the tunnel interface, TUN1, which is used for the tunnel establishment, metric 10. So this is the minimum configuration that is required for this particular scenario. And once you have all this configuration, you can go to your search store under the device, click on under the certificate management. You will have to click on certificate. As you can see on my screen, this cert is generated on a CA server, and then it was imported onto the store. And how to do that? Well, you will have to click on import, type in the name of the certificate, and then browse the certificate. Like on my screen, you can clearly see that I have the certificate. So you can click on the certificate. This is P12 PKCS. And then you can click on this, and then you can type in the export password. So this is how you import the certificate. Well, if your certificate is signed by an external CA, then you will have to import the CA cert as well. And the method is the same. You will have to write the CA cert name, and then you will have to browse, and then you will have to click on CA cert, and then you will have to select the proper extension. So in my case, it is going to be PEM since it is .crt. If you have PKCS, then you can click on that and then put the passphrase. Well, I already have imported the certificate, the above two certificate. This is the CA cert. This is the cert that I am going to use on the Palo Alto Firewall for the authentication of the firewall. And this cert is signed by a CA certificate authority. And the below cert, as you can see, this is another CA cert which was generated on the firewall. And then using that CA cert, I generated two more cert, one for the Palo Alto device, one for the PFsense, because these are the two firewall that I'll be using for the tunnel establishment with the help of certificate instead of pre-shared key. So the above two certificate what you see was generated on a dedicated CA cert server, and then it was imported to the firewall, and then the rest what you see here, these are the certificates that are generated on the firewall, and then later I imported this certificate to the PFsense firewall. CN is Palo, and you can see CN is Palo. So this certificate was imported into the PFsense firewall, and then this was again imported into the PFsense firewall since it was generated on the Palo Alto firewall. So let me show you. So this is the cert, as you can see. Issuer is Palo CA, and I have imported that as well here. You can see here clearly. So once you are done with the import of the certificate, you will have to create a profile on the Palo Alto device, and you will have to click on this and then name the profile. and keep this thing as none. Click here add and then choose the appropriate certificate that you have in the store. In my case, I have two profile for testing purpose so that I can show you the flexibility in using the certificate on Palo Alto Firewall. So I already have this configuration. So CA profile you can see here is using the CA authority, which is the imported certificate, both the CA cert and the server cert, which is used for the authentication of the firewall. And the other profile is for the certificate that was generated on the firewall, Palo CA. This is the CA cert. And this is again a CA cert. And then you have certificate here. This is CA cert and this is CA cert, what we have called inside the profile. So once you are done with this configuration, now you can move on to IPsec. So click on network, click on iCrypto, and then you will have to create the proposal, phase one. I already have the proposal. So if you want to create a new proposal, you can do here. So since I have the configuration already there on the PFsense, so what I can do here is I can match the configuration what I have on the PFsense. So I already have this proposal here. So you can see everything is matching. AES 128 SHA 256.14 28800. Everything is matching here. And in the same way, you'll have to create the phase 2 proposal. And you can see here AES 128, AES SHA 256. Okay, this one is the one. So you can see here AES 128, SHA 256, PFS enable, group 14, 3600. The same thing I have here, AES 128, SHA 256, group 14, which means I'm using PFS, and 3600. So I have phase 1 proposal, phase 2 proposal. Now it's the time that you should configure the gateway, and it's fairly simple here. So in general, you'll have to name it and then select the IQ version 1, IPv4. You'll have to give the exit interface. In my case, it is going to be Ethernet 1/1, local, keep it none. Or if you have multiple IP addresses, then you can specify the IP, or else it will take the IP that is there on the ETH 1/1. And the peer IP in my case is 109. And in the authentication method, you will have to change from pre-shared key to certificate. And then you will have to choose the certificate. So first we are going to test it with the imported certificate, which is Palo cert. And you can see here, as soon as I selected the Palo cert, which was imported into the Palo Alto Firewall, it prefetched the subject. So distinguished name is specific to the certificate information, and the Palo Alto will automatically import or automatically fetch the information. So this is your identification payload, And in the same way, you will have to fill in the remote firewalls information. You can get this information from your certificate. Well, you must be wondering, how can I get this information? Well, if you go to the firewall, the certificate that I have imported, so you can see here the canonical name, sorry, the common name, distinguished name. So you will have to copy this here and make sure you have the proper common name here, which is the firewall name. And you can get this information from the certificate. For reference, you can check this one. And I can show you this as well. You can see here the information is in reverse manner. So make sure you exactly match the configuration here. Okay, so it is going to be in this format. Even if the DN information is in this format, which is the first format, you will have to follow the format that the Palo Alto is actually using. Once you are done, so now you will have to create a cert profile, and then you'll have to name the cert profile. This is the same step what you do from the this is the same step what you have done during the cert creation and the cert profile creation. So what I have observed here in Palo Alto is that whenever you try to do something in terms of certificate, let's say altering the information, sometimes it gives away a error, like subconfiguration inside the authentication is not supported or is not invalid, or authentication is not valid. So you will have to create the cert profile. So the best way is to use the CLI. So in some time I'm going to change that certificate, so I can show you how you can use CLI to change that. So my recommendation would be to use the CLI to change the cert and cert profile. So I'm going to show you after this testing. So this is my actual configuration what I have already. Certificate. As you can see, I have selected my Palo Alto cert, which is the cert that I have imported. And the distinguished name here you can see. Common name is the Palo Alto Firewall name, host name. And the common name here is the PFsense Firewall host name. So the certificate also contains the same information, and hence it is not throwing any error. So I have clicked this so that it exactly matches this one. Or if you can click this as well if you want to, ignore the mismatch in terms of identification and certificate payload. And this is the cert profile that I was talking about. So if you start the fresh configuration, you will not have this. You will have to create this. And no matter you already have this here, even then while configuring will not show you as a drag drop, or it will not show you that profile. So you will have to create a new profile each time you actually create a gateway. So that is the reason why I am recommending you people to use the CLI. And one more thing here is that in the certificate, the imported certificate, make sure you click on this so that the firewall can trust this certificate and put it in the root CA store. So this is the certificate that was created from the GUI, but then these two options are not available when you configure it from the gateway configuration. As you can see, it is not giving me any option. It is only giving me the option of creating a new profile. So that is the reason why it's easy for us to use the CLI. Okay, so now that the configuration is already there, iGateway is configured. It's in main mode, and I've selected the proposal as well here. There is no DPD. That traversal is enabled. Let's go to IPsec tunnel. So here you'll have to give the name and then select the tunnel ID, which in my case is tunnel 1. iGateway you will have to select, and then you'll have to select the proposal. Proxy ID you will have to give. Since in my case the protected peer is this is the protected peer 14.140.40.109 and 1111. So you will have to specify that here, like local and remote. And then once you click OK, everything is going to be there. So this is how my configuration look like. I already have this configuration. Done one. VPN Palo P2. This is the proposal phase 2. Proxy ID you can see here. So I'm going to initiate the tunnel traffic, and then we'll see. As you can see, the tunnel is up. And one more thing, what you will have to see here is that in the iGateway configuration, you have local identification and peer identification as DN, distinguished name, which is extracted from the certificate. Well, if you have some other firewall on the other end, then you will have some kind of issues, you know, integrating this kind of information into this configuration. In my case, the PFsense firewall is used. So there is a special way of integrating those information here. Since if I go ahead and click on distinguished name, it is not going to treat this information proper, or it will throw a invalid error. Let's see. You can see here. So the distinguished name that you see here is different from the one that you see on the Palo Alto Firewall. So in order to overcome this, there is a standard defined, ASN.1, which is an open standard for you know defining a data type and data structure across multiple platform independent of the machine underlying. So you can select this ASN.1 format, and then once you click save, it is going to accept that. So okay, as I was telling, okay, this is the exchange information proposal, and the important thing here is the certificate information. As you can see, cert request is sent for the CA cert authentication of PFsense 01 successful, sending the end entity cert CN, common name PFsense 01. This is the common name of the PFsense firewall. And then this information was sent to the other end. And then this was the information that was received end entity cert. You can see here the common name is PA01. You can see here it is using a trusted CA certificate to authenticate that particular cert, which is this one. Common name is sumit.com. You can see here this is a cert that is used for the authentication. This is the step where the firewall is checking for the certificate, whether it is valid or not. There is no OCSP URL, hence it is showing as not available. This is the CA cert. And this is the successful authentication of the certificate presented to the PFSense firewall from the PA01. And once it is done, you can see here this is the ID payload, and that's it. Well, I have a capture available as well, so that we can understand what are the content of this particular exchange. So as usual, the first packet will have the proposal, SA payload, transform payload. These are the configuration that we already have on our proposal. And then we are going to tell the other end about the TPD version, the RFC standard, supports fragmentation, NAT traversal supported, and then the other end will select one of the proposal, And then this is the selected proposal. The third packet will be the key exchange payload and nonce. This will contain the public key, the DH public key and nonce, and NAT T for detection of the NATing device in between. The other end will also do the same thing. And at the same time, whoever is the responder can also request for the certificate. As you can see here, it is requesting for the certificate along with the other information in the fourth packet. And in the fifth packet, you can see here the packet is fragmented. And this is the information. So after the four packet exchange, the fifth and the sixth packet will be fragmented. But here in this kind of scenario where you have lots of information exchange going on, so most probably you will need the fragmentation enabled on both the firewall, and I have them enabled here in my scenario. So you will have to do the same thing as well if you're facing any kind of issue. You can see here fragmentation is enabled, and in the capture also you can see there are lots of fragmentation. So after the four packet exchange, fifth and the sixth packet will then be encrypted, but then I have decrypted it using the keys. And if you want to know more about how to decrypt the IPsec negotiation, then you can refer to my older videos on decrypting the ISACM packets. So the fifth packet, well, this is fragmented. So you can see here the information that goes on. In the normal IPsec, you will have ID payload and hash payload going on in the fifth and the sixth packet. But here in this scenario, you are not going to have just two information. You are going to have additional information along with these two information. And those would be, you can see here, okay, this is the encrypted data. You can see here, this is the encrypted data, but then I have decrypted it using the keys that I've exported from the Palo Alto. So the first payload, let's see what are the payloads that goes in the fifth and the sixth packet. So the first payload is going to be the identification payload in the fifth packet. And this is not the usual ID payload that you see in the normal uh, IPsec, whereas in you have host name, IP address, string, and all the other configuration. But here in this particular scenario, when you're using certificate-based authentication, you will have, and if you have chosen the subject, distinguished name subject, it is going to have the certificate information. And this is exactly what it is. You can see here the standard ASN.1 and this is the certificate information that goes out to the Palo Alto. And in the same way, Palo Alto will also do the same thing. It is going to send the ID payload, and inside the ID payload you will have the information. Well, I don't know whether the let's see if this will accept the IP address or not. Okay, this is the error that I'm talking about. So whenever you will do the configuration, you will get this kind of information. So it has to match the local certificate information, which is the distinguished name available in the certificate information. So I guess the Palo Alto is not right now supporting the other methods. That's not an issue. So in normal scenario, you will have the ID payload as the normal ID payload, whereas in by default it can have IP address, or it can have the host name, FQDN, UFQDN, etc. But in the IPsec, using cert instead of pre-shared key, you will have the payload identification payload based on the type you have defined, and you will have the certificate payload. So in normal scenario, you will have identification payload and hash payload, but with certificate, you will have identification payload, certificate payload, and signature. Well, signature is basically generated from the hash by encrypting the hash using the algorithm that you have chosen here. So it is going to be RSA. You can see here. So the RSA algorithm will be used for encrypting the hash and for generating the signature. So this is the identification payload, cert payload, and this is the signature payload, which is generated from the hash. And then you can request the certificate as well. This is the CA cert. You can see here, this is the CA cert. And the same thing will be done by the other end as well. So this is the phase 2. Again, I have decrypted it. So these are the payload that goes in phase 2 first packet. Identification payload in phase 2 will contain the protected IPs. So now we are going to change this cert from the certificate that was actually generated on the firewall. So you will have to choose the authentication method as certificate, and then you will have to define the profile. So here in my case, what I will do is, so you can see here, this was the one that we used in this particular scenario that was already running. So now we are going to use the certificate that was generated on the Palo Alto Firewall, which is testing Palo CA. So this is the profile, and inside that profile you have Palo CA cert, and this Palo CA cert is used for signing these two certificates that we will be using for our next scenario. So we will be using this, and then the local certificate is going to be the one signed by the Palo CA, which is testing Palo. And if you want, you can allow this mismatching payloads. In my case, I think I don't have that because I have the exact matching configuration on both the firewall. So you can see here it has changed to testing Palos. And then now I will change this as well. So if you click on yes, it is going to change this. It is going to click on this. Well, I don't want that, so let's skip this configuration. Let's try to use the local certificate name, and in this scenario we are going to use testing Palo, which is signed using this root CA. So you can see here testing Palo, hit enter. So if you refresh this, it is going to change this to okay, testing Palo CA. And then I'm going to change the local identification and peer identification, since this is not the information that is there in the certificate. Let me show you that. So this is the testing Palo. You can see here the CN is Palo, and the cert signed using this is having CN as this, which is not there. So I'm going to use the CLI to change that. So you'll have to set the type. And then you can see here it is auto populating the information that is there in the certificate. Earlier it was this information, CN complete information. Now it is having only this. The reason behind this is that the firewall is extracting the information from the certificate. You can see here it has changed. Now we will change the peer identification. So you can get this information from the certificate itself. You can see here. So you can copy this. So now you can go back to the firewall to confirm that. So both the values are changed. Make sure these are matching with your certificate information. If you want, you can click this as well, or you can use CLI to do that. So now everything is there, so we can commit the changes. So now it is committed. Let's cross verify everything. Okay, so we have updated the certificate. These are the certificate that was actually, this was the certificate that was generated on the firewall. And along with that, we have this certificate as well, which was generated on the firewall. So I imported this to the PFsense as well. So we will have to change the configuration here as well, since it was using the other cert in our previous configuration. So I'm going to change this to, let's cross verify the cert first. So it will have, okay, this is the one, testing PF. Testing PF, okay. And this is signed by testing Palo CA. I have exported both of them, imported both of them here in this firewall. Okay, seems like the cert was not properly updated. Let me do that. I've restarted the process. Okay, seems like it is renegotiating everything right now. Okay, so the issue was this. Well, I didn't change the identification type here. So like I was telling, whenever you do that, so this particular logs actually tells you that the firewall is not able to get the configuration since it received the ID payload as CNPA01, which corresponds to nothing. So that is the reason why you don't see the firewall proceeding with the exchange. So what we can do here is we can edit this. Well, again, I'm using ASN.1, which is a independent data type and structure accepted by all the platform, no matter how they are coded. So as soon as I do that, the configuration so you can see here it is coming up, and here you can see that it is coming up with the new cert that we have, which was generated on the Palo Alto. You can cross check here the CN, and the authentication steps you can see here. Authentication of PFsense myself successful, and then this was the information that was received, and it was successful. As you can see, I'm able to ping the IP as well. Well, that was all about the cert-based VPN IPsec Ike version 1 on Palo Alto. If you have any other firewall on the other end, then definitely you will have to alter the ID payload information like how I have altered here. And you have already noticed that the issue that I was facing whenever there was any kind of mismatch. So that's all in this video. If you have any question, do leave them in the comment section, and please do subscribe to my channel. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned, stay safe, have a good day.